Hey guys, we are going to design our user interface and our user experience for our application here. And we're going to discuss a lot of topics that really you should be considering while writing any application. Now, if you're just writing an application for yourself, you can make it as sort of undeveloped as much as you want. But as soon as other people start using your application, you might start getting some complaints or just outright refusal to use your application because it's not intuitive, it's not user friendly. Perhaps they don't like the colors. So I'd like to talk about all these concepts, these UI, UX design concepts today. And we're going to be using our onboarding application that we've been building on for the last few weeks as an example. Okay. So, Kurt, I know that you've got a lot of UI. Well, back in the day, Kurt, we called it GUI, right? What's all this UI, UX stuff, huh?
Yeah, actually, UI was pretty active back then, but UX, I was like, what? I remember I was like, Darren, what the heck is this UX? You know, now they've got the experience in that, you know, which to me it's all one thing. That's part of the experience, but maybe it needs to be separated, you know.
Yeah. Back in the day when I started out, I always remember hearing GUI, GUI, graphical user interface. And so, yeah, over the years, the term UI, UX, and the UX is more of the user experience, and the UI is the user interface. So you need to keep both of these things in mind.
And you want to talk about back in the day when I started working with it, it was called GEOS. It wasn't even called GUI. It was called a GEOS.
Which Geo.
Right, a graphic environmental operating system. So that's the way that's where it all started with. That's when Apple came up with their icons, and before that it was just nothing but text on a keyboard. But then Commodores had their icons, and Apple did that, and they called it a GEOS, and then it went to a GUI, and it's just kind of interesting how things are evolving. Now we got UI UX.
Yeah. I was just working on a video earlier this week, and I brought up the concept of a control. What exactly is a control? Now, if you're a software developer, you probably know what a control is. But, if you're just new to Power Apps, you're creating your user interface, you may not be familiar with like control. I don't have any control issues. A control is a user interface element that allows your users to interact with your program. Let me give you an example of what you'd be working with if we didn't have controls to implement in our applications. Does this look familiar at all? This we could call a DOS or a command line, commonly they're called console applications. And the application runs based on the parameters that you give it or the commands that you type in. It will take that. It's a very simplistic, actually, it's not really much of a user interface. It's more of a command line interface. But controls, examples of controls, you got buttons, labels, galleries, all these things that you can drop on to your Power App screen is considered a control. Okay. Let me bring up my outline here. So these are the things that we're going to discuss today. So what is UI UX? So I've talked about UI, user interface, and user experience. Okay, and we talked about GUI, graphical user interface. Kurt, what was yours that you just told us about?
GEOS. Graphical environment operating system.
Environmental or environment?
Environment.
What's the O for?
Operating system.
Okay. So would that be a GUI or a user interface for the operating system, or is that just what you would call it for any application?
Well, it turns in it's like Windows. Windows is an operating system, and it's nothing but a whole bunch of controls. That is what you're talking about. Dropping, when you see text boxes in a browser, those are controls. So it's a graphical environment operating system is the same thing as a GUI in any app. Before that, it was interesting you brought up MS-DOS. I thought it was funny because the story when you talk about the starting of Microsoft, the MS-DOS, that was actually created by a guy to try to as an interface into an operating system so that his mother could use it, and because she didn't understand all the machine language and the assembler and all that stuff that you had to learn to be able to get to the operating system. So he created MS-DOS. And so, of course, we all know the story about Bill Gates, and it all went from there. But the GUI actually started with that typing on the C prompt. That was a GUI, and that was a GUI.
Well, I mean, it goes to show you, if you want your application to really be user friendly, create it in a way so that your grandma could use it.
Exactly.
Or these days, your mother.
Yeah, and I think that was what he was saying. I want to try to create an operating system that my mother can use. That has no interest in computers in any way. But she wants to be able to get in there and look at her recipes or look at her morning schedule or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jeff, I'd like to ask you a question. Are you ready? You're in the hot seat.
I'm ready.
We need some wings with some hot sauce.
Right.
What are some user interfaces that you've worked with in the years? You currently work in an office, right?
Right.
You do some quality control and that type of stuff. I'm sure that UI UX matters in the applications that you currently use, right? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. So really, we're just using the company I work for uses SharePoint. Would that be a user interface?
Okay, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So they have one at corporate level, but then each of the plants around the country each has their own SharePoint as well. And then certain people have access to certain things, like, not everybody has access to all of them, that kind of thing. So they only allow people to have what they think they need. And I guess that's kind of that's the only one that's popping off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, let's talk about SharePoint for a moment. I'm going to add an item that I'm just thinking about here. Actually, I have the core principles. That's where I was going, the core principles. But let's just talk about SharePoint for a while. Your experience with SharePoint, what have you noticed to be good UI UX or bad UI UX, or things that you've observed in your organization while everybody's using the same app like this?
I don't know. Honestly, I have desktop apps that I use more than it. So they used to have local drives, and then they changed it to SharePoint. So to tell you the truth, I pretty much stay in my local drive. I don't even go out onto SharePoint very often, except for when our document control log is out there, and when I'm trying to get into it, I'll go into it from there. But otherwise, I pretty much stay in. Now, it did just occur to me, we have an entire operating system that is still DOS, and it tracks all of our parts, whether something's been shipped or not. And this thing is ancient, and it's really difficult to get around in.
If you don't mind me asking, let's go back to SharePoint.
Okay.
And I've got some experience with SharePoint.
Sure.
Would you say that all the SharePoint sites are similar as you go? Because you have different SharePoint sites, right?
Yeah.
And are they all set up about the same? Do they have the same colors? Are all the menus and navigational components in the same spot?
So all the menus are in the same spots, but there are color differences. So each plant in the United States has a different color at the header of SharePoint. Yep.
Okay. So down here on the UI UX core principles, I'm going to put consistency, which is one of the core principles that I implement in my my Power Apps template that I call the Jumpstart Kit.
Yeah.
Kurt, why would you say that UI UX matters? One thing that you teach me is what's a good program. So I'm just trying to give you ideas of different angles to attack this from.
Yeah, right. So that's you just hit it. What makes a good program? UI, a good consistent UI UX that the user can expect, because the user needs to be able to use the program. And I guess I want to say a good UI UX principle is going to be something that's going to be an extension of their hand. So you want them to be able to look at the program and understand it from just looking at it at a glance, be able to understand it. Beginners aren't beginners forever, but they are beginners in the beginning. So they need to be able to look at this and be able to make sense of it, right? A good program is, if the user is going to use it, then that's a good program. So UI UX matters pretty big,
Absolutely.
And that's just a little. I mean, golly, we could talk. That question you just threw at me, that could be. I could go on for 2 hours with that, man.
Yeah,
that's a huge topic.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm keeping an eye on the comments. And Amer, I do see you in the private chat as well. Hello, good morning to all of you guys. So Mickey is joining us here. I'm a SharePoint Power Apps dev. Okay, so here we've been talking about SharePoint and just sort of dissecting it from a UI UX perspective.
I love what Nick said. Did you see what Nick said? He said works without training.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good stuff.
Yeah, so that goes into the user should feel like it's effortless. And maybe we should throw in the words intuitive. So a core principle for UI UX would be intuitive. Hopefully I spelled that right. Jeff, did I do right there?
Yes.
Intuitive. Now, what does intuitive mean? Anyone?
I would say instinctual. It comes naturally.
Yeah. A good example on that, and I don't know, in other parts of the world, it might be different, but in the United States, it's often, do you ever see interfaces that have names, a list of names on the right-hand side, and then on the left-hand side have the details of those names? You don't see that, right? Because it's not instinctual. I love the way you said that, Jeff. I think that was a perfect word for the definition of it. We don't think like that, at least in this part of the world. Now, in other parts of the world, they might read right to left, but I'm used to being raised going from left to right. So when I see a screen, I'm looking at it from left to right. So and the funnel, there's a funnel process that I'm sure you're going to be talking about later on, Darren, with this UI UX. And that funnel process starts on the top left and ends on the bottom right corner, just like we were reading a page. That's intuition. That's intuitive. It's a good example.
Yeah, now that you brought that up, I'm gonna put that down from left to right, then downward.
Yeah.
And I think why that makes sense to us is how we read. Now, there are other countries, different languages that they read from right to left. So maybe it would be different in their country for those types of users. So
might be less intuitive. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Etho Star, I'm a SharePoint Power Apps dev. Is there an easy way to put hyperlinks in Power Apps? Yes. So what I do for hyperlinks is I bring over a label, and you could use an HTML control. There's actually several ways. But for a label, you make it blue, you give it an underline, and there's an onSelect event that makes it, and then you use the launch function to actually launch that link. And then Mickey says UI UX is extremely important unless your app is simple and cool. No one wanted to use it, LOL. It should be very attractive for users and also simple to use. People don't want too many clicks. Oh, that's true. I wrote an application, Kurt. So I worked with you for about a year. And the next place that I went to, I created this application. I thought it was really slick, very dynamic, data driven, and everything. And the director of this department said, "I've got to click 6 times to get there." Man, they don't like to click. Sure. And something that you taught me, Kurt, is Darren, people like to use their keyboard. If they're very efficient, they don't want to have to move their right hand from the keyboard over to the mouse just to click on something. Let's make it less clicky.
I'm glad you said that, because I have
I remember everything you taught me, Kurt.
I've got two things I want to say. First of all, I can't think of an app that I've ever made that was not simple and cool. Everything I've ever touched has been simple and cool. So I just don't know. That doesn't even apply to me. But the other thing is when we were talking about bad UI UX, in my opinion, it's when you have to go from the keyboard to the mouse. That is now. I always think in terms of General Motors. I always say that 5 million customers we're processing records for, right? And you think about you've got the guy or the gal in a back room with a green visor and pocket protector, and they're sitting here entering data all day long, and that's what they do. And they've got 5 million customers they're entering the data in, and they have to leave that keyboard to go over there and click the mouse 5 million times. How many minutes does that lose in their processing time? And how and how much wear and tear does that put on their carpal syndrome situation? So I look at that, and one of the things that I'm really upset about, terribly upset about, in fact, almost to the point where I'm going to get a case of the vapors just talking about it. I have to. They make me. Back in the old days with Visual Basic, we used to have a default button for your page where you could just press enter and it would actually use the button to click. It would do the click event of the button of whatever button you wanted to be on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that anywhere in Power Apps or in most browsers. They don't have an enter button that you could just press enter to do to do most of your stuff. I think that would be great UI UX.
So what I know about the HTML standard, and the standards change over years. But I remember when I learned HTML, you had an input button, but you also had a submit button. So the submit button would respond to that enter key. And it's like the whole thing, and data is king brought this up. Tab to the next control is important. So it seems like we've lost touch with this type of thing. Now we're not, it's like the development world went all crazy about all these JavaScript frameworks and external facing websites. And no, what about designing database applications that are web-based? These tabs, the tab index is still important. Users moving their hand from the keyboard to the mouse is important.
Yeah, you're right, Darren. So important.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about why it matters. This is what I like. What you've told me in the past, Kurt, is do people use your app? If they refuse to use it, or if they find some other way to manage their data, like spreadsheets, and your app is sitting out there for them to use, well, that's a key indicator that you didn't do a good job. And you guys have any more things to add of why it's so important? I actually like it to be, and I think, let's see here, Mickey touched on it, be cool. I like my interface to be fun to use, So, they might be working all these other apps, but it's like, oh, well, now I get to work in Darren's app for a few hours. Oh, I love this, because everything's, the right, I don't know, the colors, the sizes, the spacing, the alignment, getting around, that type of thing. You want this UX, this user experience, to be so great that people love to use your application.
Yeah. It's so funny. I had this one app. It was an MS-DOS app, actually. But what I did is I put a joke of the day. I had this huge library of dumb jokes, and I put this dumb joke. I had this dumb joke library that I accessed. It was a DLL. And it was just a whole list of library of dumb jokes. And I could put dumb jokes in there, and it would put that up there. And I had they cared about that more than they cared about the actual using of the program. That was that's all they talked about. I remember when we had this big release, it was like, that's all they loved it. They loved it.
That's very interesting, Kurt, that you keep your jokes in a DLL. Myself, I keep all my dad jokes in a database.
Yeah.
I
knew it was coming.
Give me some drums or something.
That was coming.
Right. And listen to this. So we got two things I want to say in the comments. one person says, I can't read it because it's really small, but it talks about, is this a rerun? And I think that's funny and not funny at the same time, because we do talk about this. You're going to see us you're going to see us having little excerpts of the same conversations that we're having over week to week to week, because these are fundamentals that are going to get repeated all the time. And I know for me, I like to repeat those fundamentals and drive them home all the time, so that way Darren remembers this stuff 30 years later. It's so important to remember these little conversations. What makes a good program? Well, we keep going back to the beginning. A person who uses the program. If a person using the program if people are using the program, I said that wrong. If people are using the program, then it's a good program. That's the bottom line in this whole thing. That's a fundamental. And we're going to repeat that over and over and over again within all the dynamics of programming. The other thing I said, but it gets to a point where, is this a rerun? Nick says, are you still using the same jokes? It's like, yeah, we're even using the same jokes, It's so funny. That's great.
Yeah, so with every application that you build, I think I might have to resize this or do something different here. Let me see what we got. Here we go. So I went over to the playlists, and what you'll notice here, so we've been building a onboarding application, and let me show you all the videos in that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the heading. So right now we've got 8 videos going into this onboarding application. Okay. Now, if you go back over here and look at a ticketing system, let me see if I can find that one. Building a Power Apps Help Service Desk app ticketing system. Okay. And you see near the top, look at this. We have this right here. We've got like a little sketch. Do you guys see that? So with every application that you build, guys, this is a really important thing to sort of drive home as we're talking about all this stuff, is with every application that you build, you should be designing. You should be you should have a requirements documentation. You should have sketches of your screen, your wireframes. You should have user stories. You should have followed up with the user. Now, this one is so important because you actually get the real requirements when you start to show your stakeholders visuals on what they're going to experience while using the application.
Yep. Yeah. So can I say something? I want to interject something with what you just said there too, Darren.
Yeah,
this is a topic. This is a topic, you guys, is just going to trigger me into all kinds of thoughts that I'm just going to have to it's going to sound like I've got Tourette's syndrome because I can't talk fast enough. So
this is a little bit like therapy, Kurt, when we talk about I just brought up a comment here. Don't fall in love with your app. Let the user fall in love with your app.
That's good stuff, Mickey. That's really good stuff, man. And we should write our apps like we're courting, like we're trying to get them to fall in love with us, right? Like we're selling cars or something. What have we got? What's your app got to offer? What does your app have to offer that I should use your app versus this other app? But I wanted to talk a little bit about what you had just said there, because you're talking about, if you're going to be doing this right, you should have a list of features. You should have your all your diagrams. You should have all this groundwork laid out, all this pre-planning laid out. Now, there's a caveat to this. When you're that's a perfect world. And Darren, he lives in a perfect world. He doesn't live in the same world I live in. He has time to get all that stuff done all the time, right? That's the problem. The problem is that we don't live in a perfect world. And so what we have on the other side of that is we have this boss or bosses, and the customer is usually the boss, right? At some point, it might be your boss if you're working for a company, but your boss has a customer that they're dealing with, right? So everybody has somebody to answer to. And the people that we're answering to, they're driving this. Like, we want this done yesterday. We need this done right now. In fact, they weren't even excited about it at first until they got the idea in their head that they wanted this program. And now they need it like yesterday because it's in there. It's almost like they bought something from Amazon and they got to have it tomorrow, And you just don't have time to sit down. It takes time to write the diagrams, to do the ERDs, to make your wireframes, to make your feature list, just to think about it, man. Just to sit back and marinate in your idea of this program that I've got to write. What do I want my program to do? Sometimes I'll just go around and I'll just walk. I like to walk about 3 to 5 miles every day. And I'll just walk and I'll just think about, what am I going to do with this program? And you don't have time to do that in the real world. You've got to balance all this pre-planning with deliverable. And it's just so hard to do sometimes, especially for somebody like me. And maybe you guys are not like me and you can do that, but I have a really hard time balancing in that. So I just wanted to say that we have both sides of that coin, right?
Yeah. Kurt, do you remember the analogy that I believe we actually talked about when we worked together about the spider and his web? The first time a spider designs his web, it's all intricate, and he's very proud of it. He's like, yeah, look at my web. I created it this way, and I did this and that. And somebody walks by and it's like, spiders, and just takes it down, Yeah. And then so he goes back, and it's not quite as intricate, but it's got the main structure that the spider had before, and you put it back up, like, okay, it's back and still good. And somebody walks by, spider. And then after a few times, the spider's sitting up the side, like, yeah, that's my web, and you just got like 2 or 3 strands.
Right.
There's some wisdom here that I'm seeing people say is like, don't fall in love with your own project, because you're going to have some tears somewhere in there. You put your blood, sweat, and tears in your application, and somebody's always criticizing it, or, well, it shouldn't be that way. We work this way, is really listen to users. And before you build something that you love, try to build something.
And at the same time, on the other side of that, it's all about balance, right? You need to love your program, because nobody's going to love your program the way you do. And you need to be able to tell these people that this is one of my favorite things when somebody's arguing with me about my deliverable and I'm trying to get something done.
Nobody argues with you, Kurt.
They do. That's all they do. They just won't Larson to me. So, oh boy. So the I guess I can't even remember the point I was going to get at now. Darn it. Oh, I can't remember.
You said you need to love your own program so that you can.
That's right.
Programs need love.
That's right, because sometimes you've got to sit down. I've done this many times with people like bosses and customers that just want to argue with me about this stuff, and I'll sit there and say, look, let me try to tell you something so that you're not ignorant all your life. We have to get it done this way, and the program has to be done this way. I heard you do that yourself. Maybe you didn't say that the way I just said. Let me tell you something so that you're not ignorant all your life. Maybe you didn't say that to them, but you did say it in your own way recently to a big company that was dealing with some stuff. And they said, hey, we want it done like this. And you said, I guess I just have to do it this way because it's the only way that's going to work. I mean, that's basically how you said it. And you got to have those kinds of times. They don't care about your program, but you got to, you have to. They just want to see an end result. Now,
before we go on any further down this road, I want to ask Jeff, do you have any like pairs of I guess, what's it called? A vise, something that keeps something a certain size? If you could attach it to Kurt's head here. Mickey says, Kurt must be a Power Apps guru. And then Data is King says, Kurt wins every argument.
Right, but you noticed my response.
I was going to say my response would be Kurt winning every argument, because Kurt will just out-talk you. He will just out-talk you. There's just no way you're going to win, because he'll just keep going on and on.
But what's fun in a Kurt argument is to let him ramble for a while and then hit him with a point where he has to go, oh, wait a minute. I didn't think about that.
Happens all the time. Happens all the time to me.
Kurt, I tell you what, man, if you can't dazzle them with your brilliance, you can baffle them with bull. I'm not
right. That's right. So I guess what I want to say in that too is when it comes to this type of thing, they say that I'm a Power Apps guru. It's so funny because probably most of the people that are out there listening to this today, they probably got way more experience in Power Apps than I do. The difference though is that I've got fundamentals underneath me that make the Power Apps. It doesn't matter what language I'm working with. It just doesn't matter. It will make you feel like a guru or seem like a guru to some people, just because you've got the experience in programming, those fundamentals. They carry with every language that you ever use. So, and that's what I think. That's what when I ask like what are you offering? What's your program got to offer? And I want to just say, like Darren and I think that's what we offer. We offer over many others, I think, out there in the video land. We offer fundamentals. We offer working through the fundamentals, repeating the fundamentals until you're just sick of hearing them, until you think everything's a rerun. And then you end up becoming this guru programmer, and you don't even realize it, because you're just over here programming these fundamentals, and they're working through every day in your life. And people are behind you are going to be coming up looking at you like, wow, you're really good at this. It's not that hard. It's just fundamentals. And that's what Darren and I offer. And it's Saturday. Today is Saturday, because every day's Saturday.
Every day should feel like a Saturday. And Kurt, if you ran for president, as Mickey has outlined here, Kurt, you should run for president. I think you would win every debate. And Kurt, to be honest, I'd vote for you. So you have that going for you, which is nice, right?
What do you think about that, Ron? I see Ron over here.
What you doing over there, Ron?
Yeah, I don't think.
Would you vote for me for president?
No, absolutely not.
Yes.
I can't win.
Ron, I know you're working on your
Because
power
I like
staff.
you the way you are. You'd be corrupt in a matter of a year. So no.
But not my programming principles. They will never be corrupt.
Oh boy.
No loops.
That's right.
All right, let's get back to our.
Yeah, can we do something here, Darren?
You just want to jump in and do some stuff?
Can we just do something here?
All
Even if it's wrong, let's do it.
Let's get to it. All right. But I want this to be a little more on the comprehensive side, and maybe this isn't going to be fully comprehensive, but tools for UI UX design. Well, a lot of times you can actually use Power Apps because it is a RAD tool. RAD stands for Rapid Application Development. Okay. Now, Kurt, I'm going to not cut off your head, and I'm going to take off that overlay.
I look better with the cutoff, I think, by the way.
Okay.
It was only because of the swelling he got earlier.
Jeff came up with a term for me. He called it Macy's balloon head. Yeah, when you got the Macy's parade, those giant balloons, and they're going through the window. Boom, boom.
One of my favorite tools is balsamic.com. So if you like to make screens like this and wireframes that look like this, these look nice. Okay, and I actually use this for the ticketing system and a lot of other applications. What's great about creating something that looks like a sketch is users don't get the idea, or stakeholders don't get the idea that the application is like 80% done. Whereas if you go over here, it's like, okay, we're gonna have a screen that lists off things here, and they're like, oh wow, it's already done. So that's always nice. Where did I've got so many windows in here. Here we go. So you got Balsamic. Some people use PowerPoint, not to be confused with Power Automate. PowerPoint, we've got sometimes people use Paint. You could use a napkin or paper. Did you know that Power Apps has the ability to create an app based on a sketch?
Ain't that something?
So if you go look on my channel, you'll actually find where I've done this. Let me make us smaller here. If you go to create, it could create an application from an image. So what I did is I went into Paint and just drew some rectangles, and it created a whole app. So if you do a search on YouTube, Darren East sketch, it should come right up. All right, so let's finish up these design principles. So those are a lot of different tools that people use. I should provide the one.
Screenshots too, Darren. Sorry, Darren. Just before you moved on, I just thought screenshots are pretty good for tool for developing UI UX too, right? When you want to do screenshots of things, just
like what? Like, can you give me an example of?
Well, like if you're actually wanting to create a screen, you can actually create a screen, do a screenshot of it, and use it as the background in your screen.
Okay, so like create a screenshot of your application. Is that what you mean?
Or of some other screen or some other kind of artwork that you're doing, and put it in there as a template.
Okay.
As a template.
Okay, so where do you get the artwork from. It just like other applications, maybe.
You could right. You could draw your own. You could do your own.
Your wording on that made me think of Midjourney. Have you guys ever heard of Midjourney? It's an AI image generator. You go to Midjourney and say, hey, give me a UI for this type of an app, and it'll give you some crazy looking UI. You could use that like a screenshot from those things or other applications. Absolutely.
I just as an example, I just did it this morning. I couldn't get Power Apps to draw red arrows the way I wanted it, right? So I used a program called Snagit to I put my shapes up on my form on my screen, and I used Snagit to take a screenshot of that, and then I went in there with my arrows from Snagit and drew the nice red arrows the way I wanted it, and then I brought and saved that as a picture file, and then I brought it in the background for my screen, and now boom, I got my red arrows in there.
That's interesting. Yeah, so you actually bring a screenshot or an image that you created in Snagit and actually put it into your application?
I did. Exactly. I could share it with you real quick. I don't know if you want to or not.
Okay. Let's see. Do you have your screen shared? I'm not seeing it.
Yeah. Here, I'm going to right now.
Ready?
Let me this is an example of what I'm talking about right here. Can you guys see that? Oop.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen where I got a main screen? I got processes here. This is actually a Power App here that I'm working with, and that's the screen. And I couldn't get the arrows on there the way I wanted it, so I did it from a screenshot, and then I just created a back and did this as the background color or the background fill of the screen.
I'm glad you explained that, because I'm like, Kurt, how'd you get some nice shadows on your arrows, and how did you get the arrows in Power Apps? You could have hated me there. It's like, well, Darren.
But I thought it was important because you were talking about the different tools that you can use, and sometimes you just got to be creative,
Yeah, absolutely. Think outside the box, and
yeah.
So the one last one here, I didn't want to fail to mention, and so UI designers, maybe there should be the one at the very top. Okay, so I'm gonna go here to the very top and say Figma. Anybody use Figma that's in the chat? I'm going to keep an eye out here because people really like Figma. And if you look at what we have here, you could give it a Figma UI. And so this is like, it seems like it's the de facto tool to use out there on the internet if you want to create just UI for developers. You could take that design and import it, and then Power Apps will create an application around it. Okay, so definitely wanted to mention that. So these are all the different tools, and it's not a comprehensive list by any means, but this should give you some ideas of things that you could use. And today, we're probably just going to stick with Power Apps and start to design the screens here for this application. And before we jump into Power Apps, I wanted to sort of touch on a few more of these core principles. Okay, and David Savage says that web designs I've used Figma for. Okay, very good. Yeah, so responsive. UI, UX, and this is something that Jeff mentioned to me before the live stream. Okay, so your UI, UX should be responsive. I mean, it is 2023, right? We're not back in the year 2000 before mobile devices came out. So people are using different devices, all kinds of different clients. So we need to keep that in mind. Okay, so let me, so other principles, what about clarity? It should be clear how the user should do something. Now this sort of goes into make it intuitive. Of course, I misspelled that. Let me see if I can, let's see, I can move this up here and hit tab. So this goes in with being intuitive, I would say. Okay. Consistency is here. And one moment. Now, Kurt, do you have a dad joke you could tell us while I try to get my toddler out of the room?
I sure don't have any dad jokes. What do you got, Ron? Give me a dad joke, Ron.
I don't have any at the moment.
How do
I'm
you
still
like
thinking
that?
about you being president. It's kind of got me
I
confused.
got you stuck, huh? See, I was going to say I should be a quarterback the way I just passed that off. Did you see how fast I passed that off?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. You should be playing for the Redskins or something. Oh, wait, sorry.
No, but I
Are
guess
we
I
talking about sports?
huh?
Are we talking about sports? Are you talking about how you're my quarterback?
Oh no, I was just telling him that because I said I don't really have any dad jokes. What about you, Ron? You got a dad joke? And I said, see, I should be a quarterback. I passed that off so fast. You know.
I like it.
Well, you would make a good politician. Yep, run for president.
You know what? It's all politics, man. That's life. Life is just politics. You know.
Yeah. What about flexibility? Did I spell that right? Flexibility.
Absolutely.
Nope. Ability. The interface should be adaptable to different screen sizes, orientations, and devices. Okay, so I'm going to put this in with responsiveness, but I'm going to put in here dynamic flexibility. And this is going to be more for in the features. So you should write things generic enough so that you could reuse them. They're flexible for different use cases inside the application. Okay. What other things? What about accessibility? What does accessibility mean to you guys?
Right. I was just getting ready to say that, and kind of it goes with what Jeff mentioned over in the chat, Jeff Ross. But it's you know, if the user has to click a bunch of different things to get to what they're trying to work with, then they're going to get tired of that. That you want to be able to get right to a function immediately with just one or two clicks.
Yeah, absolutely. And Data is King says, use components for consistency, for headers, footers, navigational menus. Absolutely. I like what someone said the other day. If you're unsure if it's good, get your kids to test drive it. Or your grandma. Yeah, think about other generations that might be using your application years in the future. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so this is a good list of things. I feel good about this. So what about simplicity? I probably add that here as intuitive. Because if you make it so complicated, well, if it's so complicated, I might have to have a training class on how to use it, right?
So that's a good relative word, right? Simplicity. Sometimes we use these terms and and clarity, and those are relative terms. What's simple for me might not be simple for somebody else, right? So I like what somebody just said. Have somebody else test this thing to see how simple it really is. If you think something's simple or something's really clear, make sure there's no ambiguities. I know, like for teaching, it seems the process seems clear to me, but I need people that have never seen this kind of stuff before to be able to tell me whether or not if it's simple enough for them or not. So
yeah. So those are core principles. What about patterns? UI design patterns. So what I try to build into my application template is I design screens and put them out there so that you could sort of duplicate a screen. It's got all the controls there already set up. So the whole purpose of the Jumpstart kit that I designed was to save people tons of time. So let's say you've got just a listing screen of a big gallery that takes up the full screen. It's got a bunch of records there. Well, that'll be a listing screen. If they click on it, you might want it to go to a different screen. Let's say it's a small list, and then you just want to be able to edit the details for each of those items. You might have a gallery on one side and details on the other side. So while we're going over this, I'm just going to bring this up and show you examples of what I'm talking about. So this is something that we worked on last week. Okay. And I'm going to move things around a little bit. So this would be a listing screen here. Okay. And look, we've got our dynamic sorting here, which is nice. Okay. And then if we click on one of these, you might think that you'd go off to a different screen or maybe have a pop-up that allows them to edit the details in here. Okay. So I'm going to show you some other screens that I've sort of identified of what I would call a design pattern for UI. Okay, so a user management screen. Okay, so this is a screen where we've got maybe one, two, maybe three three different columns. And then what we could do is just edit the details over here to the right and save. Okay, so that's a design pattern that I've identified. And let's look for any others.
That's incidentally my favorite design pattern, by the way. I
Which
love
one's
using
that?
the one you just showed, where you've got I love using that right there, where you have
Okay.
a listing, we call it a gallery, but a listing of names, or a listing of products, or a listing of general stuff, and you give general information, and then you've got the detailed information on the right side. You know, virtually everything's going to be need a CRUD screen, a CRUD situation, and that just seems like that is perfect for that. I love it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Kurt, what do you think of if we just reverse this? We got the details on the left and the listing on the right. Does that make sense to you or not?
Right. And I'm really glad that you brought that back up, because we talked about that earlier. But now that you have this up here, this form up here, we can have a visual to it so people can actually see it. You know, if you were, when we're talking about intuitive screens, right? That's what makes it intuitive, because most of us from this part of the world are used to reading from left to right. And we have a funnel. Yeah. You know, funnel, you think of a funnel having a wide top and a narrow bottom. And that's kind of what we're doing, is we're funneling the user from left to right the way they would read. So it's very intuitive. Now, like Darren just said, he suggested, what happens if we move that to the right and then have it to the left? It would seem backwards to most of us, right? It would just not seem right to have those names on the right-hand side and then the details on the left. That wouldn't be intuitive, you know? So you know, it's something instinctual. I think Jeff used the instinctual word. We just instinctually look from left to right. And then we also instinctually go from top down. So you'll notice that the last item he's got in there is the save button down in that bottom right corner. You know, that's the action. That's the flow of the logic flow of his screen. And it's very intuitive. I just love this design pattern, and it's not cluttery. And you've got room on there for if you need more information, I call it auxiliary information. You could put a button on there. You could have a pop-up come up. You could go to another screen for something, but you would come back to this screen right here. It's a great design pattern.
Yeah, I got a question for you, Kurt, coming from Amber. Okay, can we include GIFs on the home screen, like pleasant animation of birds flying? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, in lab 2, I'm going to be encouraging you guys to do something like that. Yeah. You know.
So that's why I asked, because he's got some really cool animations going on in some of his applications I really like. So Amber, you'll be seeing that. Absolutely, yeah. You can put a GIF and also an SVG file. You can have that animated. So I just brought up an example of the ticketing system here. And I'm going to go over to the application administration screens where I show you a lot of these UI core principles, okay? So what you notice here, so Amber's asking where do you get GIFs? I personally use loading.io. So if you type that up in the address bar, loading.io, you can find those.
Yeah, and this isn't a paid advertisement from loading.io, but I tell you what, I really do like this website for icons and backgrounds and stuff. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with it. I absolutely love it.
Where I get my spinners from.
Yeah. You can get all sorts of stuff from here. I like the backgrounds for the screens. I like playing with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So live backgrounds here. So yeah, you could set up an image like this and you see it slowly moving. That would be a great something to sort of dazzle people for the first 2 times they use the application. After that, they're like, eh.
Yeah.
So
I think that's an important point, real Darren, what you just said right there. Make sure that your program isn't so cumbersome after the first 2 times they use it that they're like, ugh, you know. I mean, it's nice to have something nice, but make it so that after 2 times they look at it, that, you know, they're not going to be it turns into a frustration, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I wrote an application once, and they wanted all the data to be refreshed because all the data needed to be, they had a bunch of concurrent users using the app at the same time, and they couldn't move on to the next screen unless they all sort of agreed on something. And they were all sitting in the same room. And they wanted all the data to be synced every few seconds. So I put a little refresh button there. And what you can do, you see how it's animating right now? And there's all kinds of different animations. Here, this one is called breath, and it looks sort of nice. So I did that. And even while using, I got tired of it moving, like it brought my attention to it. So what I did was I changed the speed of it to about half, okay? And I put that on my screen, put it out there, and at first they liked it. But after 5 minutes, they're like, hey, that icon there is causing me anxiety. And I'm like, whoa, okay, let me take that out.
Yeah.
So be very careful with animations. They might get old. If you guys remember back in the 90s where the web became really popular and Windows 3.1 and Windows 95 came out, and everybody and their mom was creating a website. You had animated GIFs and you had these marquees, and that got old really quick. A lot of people liked them, but you don't see much of that stuff anymore. In fact, it's sort of frowned on, having too many animations or anything.
I mean, it's okay to have some animation on your splash screen. That's why I think a lot of people like to have that splash screen, right? It's the screen before you get to your home screen, the one that just kind of throws, it's a splash. It can do some really cool stuff or some fun stuff, but then get down to business, with your home screen,
Yeah, if you're going to do it anywhere, a splash screen would probably be good for that. Yeah. Here on this ticketing system, I just wanted to show you. So these are the application administration screens. So this allows an application administrator to add, edit, delete, or as Kurt would call it, the CRUD screens, for all the drop downs that we would see in the application. Okay. And you see how similar, how consistent it is, how we've got the listing here. Now, this is a gallery, it's not a list box. And when they click on something, these are actually separate screens. They don't necessarily have to be separate screens, but it made sense in this particular case to do that. Now, so we're actually seeing go ahead.
Just real quick, Darren, look what you're doing here. Look at what Darren's got here. On the left-hand side, the far left side, he's got his menu of icons. See, that's his wide angle. These are wide angle. This is the activities that you can do in this app. And then just to the right of that, he's got the activities that he can do within this screen. And then just to the right of that, he's got detailed information of each item from that gallery. So you see there's a funnel that's working sideways from left to right. You see the funnel? I just kind of want to make sure you guys are all seeing that, because that's a really important design pattern. It's intuitive.
I like that.
Okay.
I agree, Kurt.
Well, thank you, because it's so often that you don't.
Kurt wins every argument. So I just want to show, while we're in this application, might as well take a little bit of a tour and sort of touch on some of the design concepts here. So here's a listing. The home screen, if it's not being used as a splash screen, I know this image is really large. I try to fill up space in my application with some related images that might look like they belong here. I could probably make this a lot smaller and this thing bigger, but so if you go in here and edit a ticket, okay, so this thing loads up, and what do we have? We have a tabbed entry screen with all kinds of different things. Okay, so tabs. When would you say, actually, Kurt, I created my first tabbed application working with you at that first job. When would you use a tab? Back then we actually had a tab control. So what's the rule on using tabs? When we should use them? Because people really love their tabs. Users love tabs. And in fact, they might want to say, oh yeah, just put tabs at the top. We'll use those as menus. They just love tabs everywhere.
Right.
But, what would you say is the sort of the rule, the guideline for using tabs, when to use, when not to use them?
Okay, so I can only speak for myself on these. I have no authoritative on this, but I tend to look at tabs as another form of a pop-up, okay, instead of a pop-up. So in other words, you have a main screen that's doing stuff, and then you have to go off and do some auxiliary things. A pop-up is something where you're going to actually do some limited operation, and then you're going to perform it, and then you're going to get back to your main screen. And you don't want to lose the context of the main screen. But a tab is something that you want. It's almost like a menu where you can see that a person has, like, we have this item out here, and you can do all these different related tasks along with this item, you know, but they're separate. They don't share the context of it, you know? So in other words, you could maybe look at one tab might be dealing with employees, and then another tab might be dealing with training, and another tab, but training doesn't necessarily have anything to do with employees by itself, but it has everything to do with employees when you're relating them, because every employee has to have training, you see? And then, or you can do products or things like that. So different subject matter is going to go in a tab form. Whereas in a pop-up, it's going to be they're going to be related to the information that you got on that screen, and you're not going to lose the context of that screen. Does that make sense?
I like that. Yeah, tabs are good. This is Data is King. Tabs are good for people who are doing different tasks and can see the workflow.
Yeah, I agree.
Where I start, my mind sort of goes towards tabs is you've got so many input controls. Let's say you're editing ticketing information or information about a customer or some entity, and there's so many controls, so many points of data entry that you can't fit all on one screen very easily. And then what I use tabs for, I try to categorize all the different input screens. And sometimes you might have a tab that goes, let's say we're looking at customers, and you might have all their sales, all of their orders that they've placed with you might be on another tab. There's a listing of all their sales. They could click on that and then go to the line items. I want to sort of put these things down here. So we've already talked about a splash screen. Okay. Now a home screen is typically just the screen that comes up automatically, right? So I'm going to put a splash screen under home. Another type of home screen we could have as a dashboard of some sort. But you could have a dashboard without it being the home screen. So I'll separate these out. And I'm not going to do the redundant thing by putting screen on every single one of these. Now within Power Apps, we're relying on the M365 login screens. So we don't have to design our own login screens unless we're creating a kiosk. Kiosk app. What's a kiosk app? Well, if you ever gone to an airport and try to check in and they want you to input your information, it's like a computer screen you walk up to. You might swipe something or enter information and walk away, then somebody else is using it. Okay, so in that case, you might want to have a login screen. So we've got a tabbed screen. We have a listing screen. Now, a listing screen, typically you want to have some sorting, some filtering built into that. Okay, and let's go. So we've looked at the ticketing system. Let's look at my other window here that I had up. Okay, so we'll call it edit screens, or an edit. Okay, an edit screen. And this is an edit screen. You click on what you want to edit, and you edit there on the side. Okay, and this could be, instead of having a gallery here, we could have a drop-down list at the very top, and we can have more space for editing the fields. Okay, we can do all kinds of different things here. I'm looking through some examples just to give me some ideas. So for the listing screen, you might want to be doing searching. Okay. What other type of things? Like a report. Just because we're doing a report doesn't mean we have to use Power BI. I've written a lot of reports inside of Power Apps. And a lot of times when people want to look at a report, they don't necessarily want to print it out either. They just want to see the information on the screen. Okay. So these are the different design patterns that I can think of. And as we sort of design more of the UI of the application, we can come back here and add them here. Okay. Ellie says, I always fight for space. I don't see. I like the drop-down option versus having a gallery. Yeah, that's sort of like the superpower of the drop-down list, is that once they select it, it just collapses and gets out of the way. So you've got more space. So absolutely, I like that. Okay, let's go in here and let's think about some different screens that we might want to have in here for this application. Okay, now all of this is available out on the internet, and it is, I'm going to bring it up here. It's Power Platform Links.
You know, can I just,
Sure.
before we jump topic too much on that, you know, with the comment you guys made with Ellie was talking about the drop down and fighting for space. And the reason why I was hesitant to say anything is because I was thinking it through for a second. So one of my rules when I'm fighting for space in a program, in a screen, is I start looking at the data and I start looking at what's related and what can I remove from that? What's redundant in this screen? What? And we call that normalized. How can I normalize this screen to make it so that it's not so redundant? It's if my screen is too crowded, there's probably some ways I can remove some of that data from that screen, you know. And yeah, a drop down is a good solution, but also removing the data and putting it in a different area might be a good solution too. You know, just kind of wanting to put we're just talking about screen design, and that's one of the thoughts. One of my rules is always, what can I put into a different area? Maybe I can put it in a pop-up box. Maybe I can put it in a tab, you know. So
yeah. So you were mentioning data. You said you look at your data when you're considering the UI. So I wanted to bring up our ERD diagram for this application.
absolutely.
But I wanted to make sure that we have that in here because you've mentioned it. A pop-up screen or pop-up element to the UI. I like that. And so there is, I believe I actually have this app we went over a week or two ago, and that is the template, the onboarding template that we had here. Let's see if I can find it quickly without wasting too much time here. It'll probably be fastest just for me to go in here, and I think it's under create. I can scroll down, look for their onboarding application, because there are some user elements that I really like from their apps, and I don't want to use theirs. I want to sort of get ideas, and that's how I use these application templates. Is I try to borrow from the things that I like from it. Okay, so what we can do is we can also go back to our, let's see here, onboarding. So here is our requirements documentation. As I said, we should have requirements already typed up. Okay, so we've got this is all available from that link, powerplatformlinks.com. I've put that in the chat so you can actually access all this stuff. Here's the detailed description of the app. We have feature list. Okay, user registration and profile management. Document upload and management. Okay, so we need a space for that. Checklists. Questionnaires. Okay, so we've got a lot of things that we need to build in this user interface. Okay, and I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to sign in to tasks. And of course, it's going to make me do a two-factor authentication, which is what's fun.
Been getting that a lot lately.
Yeah, nothing's ever so you want things to be simple and easy, but a lot of times they are far from it. Okay. So I think initially, now here on our home screen, this isn't much of a dashboard or home screen. I think I'll probably take this stuff out. Okay, and I don't need to see myself. And I believe we added this timer, if I'm not mistaken, that if they were a first-time user to this application, we want them to go to their user profile screen. Okay, so I'm going to leave this in here, but I don't want it to be visible. to the user. So I'm going to go down to visible, and I'm going to go find GBL show debugging. Okay, so it's not seen unless you're a debugger and you turn that on, and then you can see it. Okay, but on the home screen, as the user logs into this application, right now it says application template. It should say something along the lines of onboarding application. So let's go ahead and fix that just real quick. So we have app globals here. So instead of saying application template, we'll say onboarding and engagement. And Jeff's not here to tell me if I spelled engagement right. So I'm going to hit run. Here we go, onboarding engagement. Okay, so I might want to see like action items, things that I need to do as a user to be onboarded. So if I'm a new employee, I want to make sure that I've filled out all my new hire paperwork and all kinds of things that I need to do to do my part in the onboarding process. Okay, and this particular application is going to be a good example to sort of get ideas from as we're building out the UI. Okay. And one of the things that you'll see if you try to look at any of these application templates, it creates this little button here that you click on. And all these templates are going to use an Excel document that it's going to be stored in your OneDrive. So while that's coming up, so I want to see a listing of tasks, things that I need to do. Okay, and the gallery is an excellent control to use. Okay, so I'm just going to go through my screens here and find a good, nice gallery that I might want to use here. Okay, I'm looking at, here's the default listing screen. Okay, I might actually use this. So I'm going to select the heading and the gallery. I'm going to copy that. And here on the home screen, I'll actually want to just see a listing of everything that I need to do. Okay. And I'll go back over to this onboarding application, make sure that I'm making progress on this thing loading up as it's going. Okay. Now, let's go back over to our ERD diagram and look and see if we have any type of tasks for the user to complete. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, we have users, documents, requirement. Okay, well, that is interesting. A requirement, not an application requirement, but a requirement that the user needs to fulfill. Okay, so we have a requirement here. Okay, so over in our application, we have a lot of SQL Server database tables, right? So here's a requirement. So on this gallery, the data source should be that requirement. So I'm going to type in requirement. Okay. And of course, these fields aren't very happy. So I'm going to say something like name. And for this, I'll say, looking at over our data source here, requirement, the name. Now, a requirement could be assigned to a user, but it also needs to be assigned like an application. So, you know, we're writing an application. This onboarding application to be flexible enough for organizations, tenants, environments, and individual applications. Okay, so what we need to do here, let's bring this front and center. And we want to have these different ties in here, okay? Now these, looks like document requirements. some sort of thinking through how this would actually be implemented here on our home screen. What I would think up here on this screen heading might be date due. Okay. So that date isn't there yet. I'm going to create, I just use created on for now. And for this first heading is task. Okay, there we go. So when I log into this onboarding application, I'm going to see all the things that I need to do that have not been completed yet. And I want to see, and it'll probably be sorted by this due date. Okay.
So Darren, did you want to just show the list of items that aren't completed, or do you want to show all the items in the task and then show like completed check marks when they're done? Is that kind of how were you looking at that?
You know, we could go either way. In fact, maybe what we need is different types of tasks. Say for like new hire paperwork. So this also, I want this application to track engagement. So there might be like a weekly things that they might need to do, like provide feedback, that type of thing. But I like your question, that is the area you're going here, because that's something you need to think about. If you're writing some type of a task application, you need to wait for them to say, okay, this is complete. Okay, or the application tells the user that it's complete. Do you show them all the completes? Do you show them at the bottom? Okay, a lot of times what I'll do is it might be up to individual users. Okay, sometimes users like to see everything that they've done, so they have a sense of accomplishment, a sense that they've done 90% of the work and they just got a little bit more to go. So that might be a good thing to show there.
So Darren, I was thinking along the lines that you might want to show in a listing of priority, like you might be able to prioritize your tasks, and then have it in a listing of priorities from high to low, and then that way you can just kind of see the check marks or the completed kind of sporadic through that. And then I was thinking that more important than a date due, which is pretty important, is also a date complete. Like a completed date in there, so that way, if somebody else is looking at, let's say that you were making this for you and me, and you had me out there doing a bunch of tasks, you could be able to take a look at the priority the board and see what I've got done and what I don't, and what days they were done. You know, I mean, might be important. You know,
I like this. This is all good input for this. You want to think about this because you're designing the screen at the get-go, and you want to have everything sort of kept in mind as you're designing things. Absolutely. I'm going to go over to this application here, and this is sort of like their first screen that comes up when you try to onboard. Okay. To add an admin user, well, I'm going to add myself as an admin. Okay, I'll click on Darren here, add an admin user. Okay. Okay, Darren's been added. I'm going to click on Get Started. So this is almost like a splash screen. Hey, welcome to the organization. Now we could create like a welcome screen. Perhaps we should do something like that. Okay.
I like it.
You like it?
I like it.
What do you think, Ron? You like that idea?
That's what I'm following you on right now, right here.
He's still stuck on me trying to run for president. You know,
I'm way past that now.
We shot him for the rest of the day. He's done.
No, that's what I'm following you on right now with this very thing, and that's it was pretty neat. It's I like that.
Very cool. So what would we and just sort of I don't think there's anything special about this particular welcome screen, but just sort of grabbing some ideas from this.
Do we want to go minimalistic, or do we want to get out there and just
go big or go home, Kurt?
Yeah, pinball wizard stuff going on here, man.
Kurt, have you ever written an app that's got a pinball in it?
I have.
I'll call this the welcome screen. And because this is probably one of the first screens that they might see, I'm going to move this all the way up. Okay. I always like to organize my screens in a particular order like that. Which ones are going to be used the most or first. Okay, so here's a welcome screen. Now, if I click off to the loading screen and then click back, you'll see that the text changes there. And Jeff, I do see your comment here about like progress. How would you use the progress object? Okay, the progress. Now, something that I'll mention here, if you do a search for progress, there's no progress control. You could use a chart control. Now, if you go over to modern, has anybody ever started playing with the modern controls within Power Apps? Okay, you'll see that there's a progress bar. Now, if you don't see these modern controls, what you need to do is go into settings. In a few months, you'll be able to see them right off. You go to upcoming features and you type in modern controls and themes. Make sure that that is on, okay? If you don't see it. I'm going to go back up here. Now, Jeff, is this what you were talking about? This, let's say this progress bar. Okay, look at that. So you could utilize something like that. You could use, how I've done some type of a progress is I've used 1 or 2 rectangles, and then I'll take the progress and I'll make the width of one rectangle inside of another one that didn't have any fill, and I'll set up the progress to, and it's sort of a cool little thing. Yeah, so you could use a progress bar. You could sort of create your own just with rectangles. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, and then for a welcome screen, now over in their app, they've just got some labels, it looks like. Something that I do like about what they've done here is that they've got like a rectangle or a container. Okay, I do prefer containers over just random rectangles. So I'm going to go look for container here. Okay, so we'll bring this over. And let's give it a nice gray color. Very good. And then I'll add in a label into this container. I'll cut that there. Click on the container, then paste, and I'll put it in there. Okay. So welcome. Welcome to the ... And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie into the global variable that's got the name there. Okay, so we've got GDL app globals application name. Okay, make this a little wider. We might want it to be centered and maybe something like a 28 font. Okay, and I'll want to tie into the application's theme. Okay, by saying GDL theme, primary dark. Okay. All right. Something else I like to do, a border on a container like this, is I'll go over to border color and I'll grab the color out of the container. So I'll say self.fill. And then I'll do a color fade. I don't want to fade the color. I want to darken the color. So I'll give it a negative number here, like 25%. Click off of it. And it's got a nice look to it, I guess. Okay. So we can add on to this welcome screen, but at least we have a welcome screen now. So we can go to the users like, okay, here's the welcome screen. It's like, oh, well, can you put some pictures here, some clip art or something? Well, absolutely. So if you go off and look for some images here and have them, what else do they have here? Get onboarded helps get on board. I guess that's the name of the application. Get on board. Helps you stay on top of onboarding tasks. You also find team insights and helpful company resources. Okay. So we might want to add something like this. Okay, perhaps smaller, 20 or 18 or 16. And you might have more of a paragraph. And if you want some, especially as you're designing UI like this, you might want to utilize some just filler text. And a good way of doing this is say, just do a search for lipsum, Lipsum, and you want to go to a generator that will just generate some text for you. Okay, so I'm going to copy this paragraph, go over here, and I am going to type in 2 double quotes and paste that in there. Okay, and we've got quite a bit of text, maybe more than what I wanted in there. Okay, now does that look nice enough for a welcome screen for you guys? I'm keeping an eye on the comments as well. You guys like that? For me, I'd almost like to see some images. Maybe somebody with a clipboard.
I do too. I like images on there.
Yeah.
It's not something simple, something minimalistic, maybe.
Yeah. And I mean, we could put the image right here. Okay. And just to sort of show that we have some stuff. What's that?
It could be if you're capturing the person's you can put their profile picture on there if they've got it, you know. That might be kind of slick right there. I don't know.
Well, we do have it up here.
Right.
So yeah, we could do that there, and something else that we could do. What's that?
It was just an idea. I don't know if it's a good one or not.
Yeah. An image of a checklist. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. Let me a tool that I like is Canva. Let me just create a new design. I wasn't prepared to sort of demonstrate Canva here in the spot, but
when's that ever stopped you from anything like that?
I know, right? Yeah, Amber was asking about the variable that I used here. Okay, so, and that was a global theme. Yeah, so to grab the colors here in the Jumpstart kit, I've got a screen called Copy Controls from Here. Okay, and all these things are using the dynamic colors that are set up here.
Okay. Now hold on a second. This spot right here, Darren, this blew my mind. When I saw this, I've been programming for 100 years, and I saw this, and I never thought of doing this. I never thought of actually creating a screen down here that you can get everything set up the way you want to get it set up, just the way you want it. Because think about how many times you use a text box or a text input box. That's what they say these days, or something that you use often a lot, buttons, and you might do that in all your screens. And I won't go through the trouble of bringing it down, getting everything set up, and then going to the next one and bringing it down, getting everything set up. And it takes me hours to do that. Whereas he just does it one time, puts it over here on this screen, and then accesses this screen whenever he needs to go grab a control. He doesn't have to go up there and use the panel anymore. He just grabs it from right here and does the old Control C, Control V, And I'm telling you, it's a time saver, man. It's a crazy time saver. I love this, and it just blew my mind when I saw it, and I never thought of that. It's just, I think it's just a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my whole purpose in creating this, is to save me time on any new project. So yeah, in order to get at all the theme stuff, the dynamic themes set up in the application template called the Jumpstart Kit, you can access it all here. Okay. Something I'd like to share, just because we're on the topic here, are you guys aware that we have a whole free community where you can get help for your Power Apps, your learning journey in Power Apps? Okay, I'm going to share it here with you guys. So if you go, I'm going to share the link at the top of the screen. So So if you go to tinyurl.com/power platform community, you can get here. Okay. And this is a place where you can ask questions, and we talk about all this stuff. Now, for the past 2 years, I've actually sold and I still sell my Jumpstart kit. That saves people tons of time. If you go over to Classroom and you purchase it, you'll be able to access all your stuff here. You can download it and stuff. But did you know you can actually earn all of my products and services for free? Okay. So if you go here, access all content for free. If you're involved in this community, you'll gain rank. Okay. What do I mean by rank? So as you post helpful content in the community and other people find it helpful, they're going to click like on your either comment or a post, and you'll gain rank. So I'm rank 5 right now. So I can't make myself a black belt. I actually have to go through all the ranks myself as a user of this community. But at the yellow belt, you'll earn the crash course for free. Okay. And I sell that for, if you don't want to do that, I sell that for right now $27. I don't like to mention prices because sometimes prices change. But the Jumpstart kit is more than that, and you can earn that once you reach level 5. And at the level 7 brown belt, you'll get the ticketing system. And then if you reach the black belt, which might take some time, might take some effort, you can actually get access to the accelerator program and accelerator community as well. Okay, so I just wanted to mention that. So sometimes, I don't know, I guess there's this assumption that anything on the internet should be free. So I just wanted to let you guys know, if you just don't have them, I don't want money to be a factor for you not to be able to get access to something. So I set that up that way. So I just want to let you guys know about that. Okay. And then I'll hide that overlay at the top now, and we'll get back at it here. So to answer Amber's question, yeah, it's globaltheme.primarydark is how I access that. Okay. And then I'm going to I just want to give all kinds of ideas. So what Kurt was saying is you might actually want to display the user's face right here. Okay. And we might want to display another thing. Let's say Phil. This might be another image of, let's say, a manager with a clipboard where they're checking off different items that you need to complete your first day or for orientation.
Okay. Or
yeah.
It could be something that defines your mission statement. If you could put a picture to your company's mission statement, that would be something kind of neat there.
I like that. Picasso. Can I get a free trial for experimenting Power Apps UI Dataverse? What are the prerequisites for getting free trial for Power Apps? Okay, what I would recommend is you go set up for a developer edition environment for Power Platform. Okay, create a developer environment with Power Apps. So yeah, you could do it for free. Now, what I would recommend is if you're really dedicated to the Power Platform and learning and all that type of stuff, I don't like to have something, and let me provide this link just in case you are interested, anybody's interested in that. If you're a part of my accelerator program, you get your own environment, you get your own Dataverse database, you get your own SharePoint sites, you get your own whatever you want to do to develop. It only costs $6 or $7 to actually create your own environment. And I'll show you guys what I have here. If I go over to, let me hide this just for a moment. Go into the accelerator here. What we have is an admin and governance section to the accelerator program. And look what we have. You might want to have your own domain. Okay, so I have my own domain, nice.us. Kurt and I actually went through this, setting up our own domain, setting up our own M365 tenant, and we did an orientation. There's all kinds of good stuff in here. And I recommend, like, if you're serious about this Power Platform, actually create your own tenant. Now, it could be the developer one. I actually like to pay for it and actually use it because the developer plan is just meant for development. But not only do I want to have a little playground, but I actually want to start utilizing this stuff, which would sort of violate the terms and conditions for a developer. But there's that link. I put it in there if you're interested in that. So it's sort of a good thing to discuss there. And you can create trial environments. Yeah. Ellie is asking a question from Kurt. Kurt, what if they do not have a user pick? Would you display something else so it's not blank?
Yeah, absolutely. To have some kind of a general picture that, I've seen that many times, like in your profile. If you haven't filled out a profile, you'll have some kind of a sample profile picture sitting there, or again, you could put something else in there that could be just like related to the company in a way, Maybe what you could do is get a cool little image of a construction worker with a shovel and say under construction or something like that with it, because you don't have a profile picture yet. That might be kind of cool. I don't know. That's some ideas.
You're dating yourself, Kurt. I remember back in the 90s, people had these under construction. Where is loading.io? Let me show you guys. It's almost nostalgic to me when I see one of these of what you're just describing here. But if I go in here and type in construction,
I still use it all the time. What are you talking about? 90s. I guess some people still drive Model T Fords too, right?
Those are classics, man.
You know what? I like that. I'm not old. I'm a classic. There we have it. Yeah, what's wrong with that? That's great. Just because people these days just don't take the time to think about stuff like that. That's the only reason why. Back in my day, we.
And okay, so it looks like Sanford Chancellor is looking for the link. Now, Sanford Chancellor, are you talking about this link here? Let me make sure I don't post it in Restream. I'll actually post it on YouTube here. Okay, so hopefully you see it now, that link. Okay. So what was I going to say about this construction thing here? I did see a comment here from Ron, says, I have problems with JPEG images. So the problem with JPEG images is that they can become pixelated if you make them bigger, because it's called a raster image file. So if you generate an icon over here, this is what's called a vector image. So you can size it to take up the full screen, and it's not going to be pixelated at all, because the image being drawn is based on math and geometry.
Vector means sectors. It breaks it off into sectors.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess I just want to take another stop back. The point that I guess I'm getting to, and hopefully you're getting to here, is when you're using these images, this is your place for just to be creative. Just be creative and have fun with it, man. You know what I mean? This is what I think is all ideas. Just try it. If it doesn't work, don't do it again. Just
yeah.
So
I made a change. If we go back to the home screen, if you remember what we did in the app on start, is if the user comes and starts using the application, what we do is we go do a search on the user's database table. If they're not in there, then this is the first time they've ever used the app. So what we did is we put a timer on the home screen. And if it's the first time, instead of taking them to the profile edit screen, I want them to see the welcome. Okay, so they'll see this. And then here's the question. If we go over here to the user profile screen, I want to have a link to that. Okay. And what we can say here, maybe we'll just move this container up. I'm glad I put it in a container, not just some random rectangle. Maybe I didn't put the image inside the container.
Oh,
points off.
Points off.
Right? We'll put that in there. Now it's inside of that. Okay. So maybe I want to have some friendly links. Okay.
Back to I jump around because my mind's still thinking on some of the stuff that we talked about previously. Ron had said something about problem with JPEG. Another problem with JPEG sometimes is, and maybe you can answer some of this too, because I don't quite know the answer to it. I think it's a sizing issue, right? So some JPEG files are bigger than others, And so if you've got a certain kind of control that you're using, it can't handle it. Is that right, Darren?
With what can't be handled right?
With the JPEG, with the size of the JPEG files, maybe that was one of the problems that he was having with too.
Okay, so yeah, when you have an image here, let me see if I've got an image I can pull in that would be good for this. Let's click on logo. Okay, this is a good example. Now this is a PNG, not a JPEG, but you're going to have this with any type of graphical image. So here's the company logo up here at the top, right? You guys see that? And so I just tied into that logo here in this image. I'll put a border around it so you can see. Now, it may not be the exact same aspect ratio, okay? So for example, you might have like a landscape orientation, but a person's profile photo might be more like a portrait, up and down. Okay, so this is more of a landscape. I could say fit, and if I made it fit, it's just going to go across the side here. Okay, and then so there's different options within the image control that you might want to use. There's center. No, I don't like that. What about tile? I don't like that either. So you can stretch it. There's all kinds of things that you can do. But yeah, if you're trying to get this thing to work right, you want to play around with it and maybe get the right image for the right spot. So for here, we almost want something like, go back home. See, this image is more of a portrait. And if I had an image somewhere else, it would be, it may not make sense. You know what I mean? So I like to put in images into UI. Another example that I could show, that's actually a really good sample to use for something like this, okay? So if we go in and I go look at my checklist inspection app that I show off a lot of times here on the channel, there's lots of examples. I put images almost on every screen. And there were spots where I needed something that was portrait, sometimes landscape, that type of stuff. So while that's loading up, okay, I'm gonna go with I'm gonna put sample image back in there for now. Okay, so you see how that tiling worked there? Yeah, here we go. So you see I needed something like a portrait. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay. And as we move throughout the application, look at this. I just needed something to fill right there. Now I don't like this empty space off here to the right. Here's something I needed just to sort of fill this up. This was for cars. So I wanted an image of cars somewhere. So this is more like a landscape oriented type of image that you might want to put in there. Okay. You see how I put that one in there? And you can crop and pan and do some other things. Okay, so here is a good example. Somebody with a clipboard. They're about to do some work. Okay. And to look at that inspection screen, we can go into one of these existing records. Okay, we're really not using images here. Okay, so hopefully you guys like those examples. And somebody at the very beginning was asking me, hey, Darren, how would you create a hyperlink? Well, this is how I would do it. So they're a new user. They come in, they see this welcome screen. They're like, okay, this is what this app does. Well, I might want to say down here, well, update your user profile because you haven't uploaded an image yet. Okay. So what I would do, and I told somebody earlier at the beginning of the session, is I would make the color to be absolute blue. Okay. So for the hexadecimal, that would be the R is for red. So I'd make that 0. G is green, so I'll say 0 for that. In the B, I'll say FF. That will give me a pure blue color. That is what people have been accustomed to seeing as a link. So that's what I try to do. Although these days, it's like the colors for links, they try to roll it into the branding, whatever color palette they're using for this for the application. Okay, so I made it underlined, I've made it blue, and I've given a description of what they can expect. But you notice it doesn't look like a link because I've just got this little text edit thing. How do you make something look like a link? Well, you can bring over an icon, okay, like 3D printing. Really doesn't matter which one you use, is I'll put it over this little label here, okay?
Now pay attention to this, guys. This is really, I mean, this is good stuff. This is, people pay big money for this right here. This is the details of a user interface, and it's really important, man.
Yeah, I agree. You guys may not think so, but
it will be.
Otherwise you might think that this is impossible. This is like a little workaround here. For the color, what you want to say is you want to use a very special magical color called transparent. I didn't do that right. Tab instead of enter, okay? So now if I were to run this, now I've got a little hand there that I would expect for that. Now, what I did for this label, as I gave it a border temporarily, I'm gonna take that border out. And I'm also gonna look at all the chats, including the private chat. And I see that Amber asks, are those 4 little squares alignment purposes, Darren? Yes, you caught me. That's what I use those little squares for. Yeah, I always align things up. It's actually a concept that Kurt taught me back in the day that he may not even, Kurt's probably forgotten more than what most people know.
he thinks I forget everything.
He would call this a gutter. You remember that, Kurt?
Yeah.
You would teach
So
me
the
about
gutters.
gutters.
Your gutter width, yeah.
Yeah, your gutter width.
I wish I came up with that term. I didn't, but I certainly made it profound. That actually came from the printing industry. That was like the gutter width.
Really?
Yeah, the old days.
Now, just keep in mind, if you're creating a link like this, the label's what's displaying it and actually looks like the link. They're not really seeing the icon. You want to put the stuff that you probably put in the click event for that label in the icon on select event. Okay, so we're going to navigate over to the profile screen, right?
So just make sure when you're done setting this whole thing up the way you've got it set up, to go back through the steps one more time with your workaround here.
Okay, surely.
Because I want people to see this.
And then whenever you navigate, typically I'll provide a screen, transition. I like fade.
I like cover.
You like what? Cover?
I like cover. It's more drastic, right? It's like,
well, now I want to know what it looks like. Now, I actually have a whole video for navigate and launch. If you check those out, I actually go through and show you what all these do.
But it's probably more professional, I think. But cover is kind of cool,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I run this and click on it, ooh.
See how it kind of went to the side? I kind of like that. And then when you go back, it'll go back the way it was. Oop,
yeah.
Look at that. It's kind of neat.
That sort of looks cool.
I like it. Now, look, guys. I want him to go back through this his process with this covering up. First of all, the little details is what's really important. That's what makes it separates you from the average bears to the world-class programmers, man. And when you look at the icon and it's showing like it's going to be text in there, it's confusing. He explained that earlier. But the important thing I want you guys to see in this is the workaround. Sometimes things are just not available to you in every operating system or language. And maybe it'll be, maybe one day it will be available to us a different way of doing it, but for now it's not. And I guess I want you guys just to kind of get into that mindset when you're programming, when you're stuck and you think something's impossible, to not stop. Try to figure a way to do it. You've got to make this happen somehow. And there's always a workaround. There's always some way to do it. Darren says oftentimes that he says, that's what separates him, is he'll find a way to get it done when others people say he can't, and that's the goal, is we got to be able to get this stuff done. And again, sometimes our resources are limited, so we have to make do with what we got. And that's how you do it. You got to get your mind wrapped around. That's programming. That's real programming right there.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know Sanford was looking for the link, so I don't like to plug my stuff too much and make this too much of a commercial issue or anything, but I did provide the link to purchase the Jumpstart kit. if you want to, save time and not have to be so active in the community in order to get it. So I provided that. And then I just want to make sure I've got all the other things. I'm addressing all the comments that are coming in here. Sectors just like calculus.
Yep.
Oh, you were talking about vector images. Okay, yeah.
Yep. Just like calculus.
Jeff says personalize it by having welcome display. Oh, yeah. Yeah, why didn't we do that, Kurt?
See?
So welcome to the application. Okay, and then we would say, and he's on it. GBL user dot and I need an ampersand, not a comma. Well, if I can type.
I certainly like the GBL way better than the var. VAR.
Yeah. Let's do this user, and we'll say display name. Okay, but we need to put in splice in a space and maybe even a comma. Welcome to the onboarding engagement app, Darren. Okay, very cool. Will performance, Ellie says, become an issue with too many images?
Yep.
Yes, it will. And it's the way, and the point in which it becomes an issue is really dependent upon how large the images are. So you want to only use images that that are sort of scaled down. I mean, if you need an image that will just take up this size, you can upload an image and use an image that is 10 times the size of that, and then this image control will put it in here. You always want to make sure you've got images that have been optimized for the web that hopefully are underneath a megabyte, and as you add more and more images to the application, it can slow it down. Okay. So,
and that's true, but that's also true with any object though, right? Because we talk about variables, and a variable is just a memory location that's going to take one value. But when you're looking at these controls, if you look at the right-hand side of a screen of a control, there's lots of variables going across there with lots of different sizes. And these controls take up. So whenever you have a lot of controls or a lot of pictures, the more stuff you put on, the slower it's going to be. It's just the bottom line.
One of the ways I deal with that when I'm building standard work instructions is to just change all the pictures into bitmaps. So they're a much smaller size.
They're smaller. Yeah.
But they look as crisp as a JPEG or anything else. I mean, they're good pictures.
They can. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jeff. Darren, that maybe that's what I was trying to. I can't get the words right, and when I'm asking you about this JPEG, is there an issue when you get such a size that you can't use, like it can't process? This is too big for the image control or whatever control. Is there a case of that? Where it's just not about the formatting, but just the picture, the file itself is just too big.
Okay, well let's try this out. I've got a subscription to a site. It's called Storyblocks, and I can get all kinds of images and music and all kinds of stuff. Okay, so let me go in here and let me type in onboarding. So we might get some images that we could really use. Okay, so sorry we couldn't find anything. Okay, there's got to be some good stuff in here. Backgrounds. Okay, and it's looking for some reason for let me say photos. Let me say all images. How about that? And instead of onboarding, I'll say onboard. Okay, doesn't like that either. What about HR? There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so let's find ourselves a really good image. This might be a good image to use, just the concept of being onboarded. Maybe you start like at a ground level and you're walking up, you got all these steps to complete until you get to the top where you can go out and do stuff, do your job.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I go in here and I say, I thought I was logged in here, but let's say download. Okay. So I've got a big file here, and let me just take this off the screen for a moment. And you see what it says, 12.7 megabytes. That's That's pretty big. Anything, you know, in a decade from now, 12 megabytes will be like 12 kilobytes, right? If you keep something under a megabyte, that'd be great. Maybe 100 kilobytes would be good. But I'm just going to save this to my desktop here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on it. Now, it's taking up my full screen. I've got a 32-inch monitor, and this is only 25%. This thing could blow up. I've got a matrix of 4 screens, 4 monitors here, and it could take up all 4 monitors. So if I go, I wanted to say just 100. There we go. Look. Now, will I have a problem with this? I don't know. Let's try it out. Okay. So I'm going to go over to multimedia, and I already have some images over here, mostly SVG files. SVG files are very small because it just has the numbers in there for the calculus, math, geometry, whatever we want to say there. Yeah. And I'm going to upload something here, and I'm going to move this around, and I'm going to go to my desktop. Bring that in. Okay. Now, personal development. Now, if I just click on this, it's going to bring the image over.
So
it could take up full screen. Well, look how slow it just moved.
And how big was that file there? That was a big file, right? I mean,
over 12, almost close to 13 megabytes.
And the reason why I asked this is because I've seen cases where they say that you got to make sure that your JPEG has been trimmed down to be able to handle the size. And I didn't know if that was because of the image control, if there was something like that with that. Now, it maybe have nothing to do with that.
Well, this is the name of the file, so I'm going to copy that, and then I could make this thing really small. Okay.
Yeah.
Put that over here, and let's say we're trying to get this thing to show in here. Okay. Well, it shows there just fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that's what we wanted to see, and that is the case with, you know, the stairs up and everything.
I kind of like that. I kind of like that. And onboarding, you know, it's the steps that you got to take. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. But keep in mind, here is an app that we can use to size things down. Let's say edit. Okay. We could crop. We could do all kinds of things here. Now, this is just 19%. So if all we wanted was this guy and maybe the 5 stairs leading up to him, we could really crop this and really change it. So yeah, there are some times when you might need to resize it, crop, add some elements to it. Absolutely, that will help this out quite a bit. I would probably want to get this image under 100 kilobytes for something like this. Okay, and Ron said that solved my problem. Very good.
Yeah, because I know that like there's been email apps where you know you can't send a file across email, and there's apps that'll actually trim down the JPEG so that you can send it across there. And that's kind of what I was talking about. Was there something that needs to be trimmed down to be able to get in there? Is there a certain image limit, you know, or not image limit, but a byte limit? But apparently not. You've just been kind of showing that not really.
Not really. I've noticed. I had an app that I did for a group of engineers where they go around to site locations, and I give them an option either to use their camera. Okay, so I'll drop a camera over here, and I don't know what camera it's going to pick up on.
Well, now that'll take memory up. Boy, let me tell you, I just did a little app last night. It was like, look at him.
Look, guys, I'm in black and white. And that's a different camera. So I've actually got 3 cameras right now. I didn't know which one I was going to pick up on. So this one I use for black and white stuff when the other ones aren't working. So what we could do is, let me think here for a moment. We have a multimedia, where is it? Add picture. Okay.
Yeah.
We could have them upload an image they've already taken, or we could use this. We could use the camera. So I gave them the option using the camera or uploading. So those are the 2 options I gave them. This little camera will actually compress it and make it smaller, which is nice for a database. But they also wanted, let's say, they go around and take all the photos, and then later on they open up the app and start uploading them all. Well, that's going to upload the full resolution, which might be 12 megabytes. Because as the years go by, these smart phones, they take larger and larger files because the cameras are getting better and better. Okay, so if you want to conserve more space, you almost want to force the user to use this camera control, okay, and provide a way for them to toggle through all the different cameras. I think on mine, I've got like 5 different cameras just on the phone. So keep in mind there might be like a front-facing camera and another camera on the other side that they might need to toggle through. So that's a way to sort of save space.
You know, by the way, Darren, it's kind of interesting. For the accelerator program, I'm actually getting ready to do a video on the camera and selecting cameras, and so it's funny how you're working with you're demonstrating exactly what I'm going to be talking about in the video here. So it's kind of cool.
Very nice. I like it.
Yeah.
So accelerator guys, look forward to that. I like it.
Yeah,
now, something that you asked me to do, Kurt, was do this thing again. Okay. So keep in mind, I've got a label here. Okay. Yeah. So you bring over a label on the screen. That's all that this is. And something else I would want to do here is
now what's the problem? What's the problem there, Darren, when you bring that label across there that you're trying to solve?
I don't know.
The cursor issue that you have, right? When you're looking at that, the cursor doesn't look right. So that's what he's trying to get rid of. He's trying to defeat that cursor issue.
I do have, you know what I did? I messed up the icon. Look at that.
And it was your moment to shine.
How easy it is. So if I hover over this one, I get the, the pointer down here. I'm not getting there.
Look at that.
You notice that?
Look at the difference right there. That's when we talk about intuitive. That's what intuition is. It's when you see that dash up there, that makes the user intuitively think that there's text that's got to be input. It's a place where they're supposed to input text in there, right?
Yeah.
It's not a click event type thing, but you're wanting them to click on that. See that? It's the little things like that that make separates you from average bear stuff.
Average bear.
Average bear. Don't be an average bear. It's got to be better than the average bear.
And we'll have the home screen as sort of like the dashboard. So I'm going to go down here for the icon here, and I'm going to say home screen. So hopefully that makes sense what Kurt was trying to point out there. So I've created 2 links here. The first one allows them to update the profile, okay? And then this dashboard will allow us to go back, really to the home. So so something you always have to do, if you add anything to a screen, you always got to make sure your menu's on top, and then make sure that your spinner's on top.
I never do that. I always forget to do that.
Points off.
And then you got the spinner going, but then you got these labels that are on top of your spinner, and it looks just stupid. It just looks stupid.
Yeah.
You're better off just not to even have a spinner there.
Why not use a button control to create links instead of 2 controls? Yeah, absolutely. It's just a matter of preference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you could use a menu and have all those items there. Yeah. But you always got to make sure they're on top.
The point in that is the mindset of the workaround to try to find a way around the aspect of it. Use the resources that you have available to you.
Yeah. So all right, so we're doing good. We're designing screens here. So I'm feeling good about what we've done here, because now we've got a few screens to work with. So this is the welcome screen. This is the first time they've ever been here. We're going to welcome them. If they're not, it's not the first time, then we want them to go back home here. And I believe I probably want to have some type of profile thing here, or maybe they click on their picture up here and it would go to the profile screen, because I want that profile screen to be for them to go to the profile screen at any time, not just the first time they come in. Okay. So let's go through any other screens here. So again, this was a listing edit screen. Here's a listing screen. So that's really what I wanted to drive home today, is that you're going to have all types of different screens. And as we go through and build this application together over the next few weeks, you're going to see more screen types. So we've talked about tab screens. We've talked about listing screens. We've talked about editing screens. We've talked about pop-ups. Okay. So for example, one form of a pop-up is a spinner. Okay, we always implement spinners. If you're going to go off and do some type of database operations, typically will take between a half a second to 3 seconds or more with Power Apps. So something to sort of keep in mind, you should always have a spinner ready to sort of show them that, hey, it's not frozen, we're working here. Okay. And so I guess I wanted to say all that to say that as we're building this application, we're going to go over more and more examples of designing our UI. But instead of using Balsama, instead of using Paint, instead of using wireframing software, you could just simply use Power Apps to, I believe, Kurt, what you would, the word you would use a lot of times is prototype. We're going to create a prototype and put it out there for them to look at and use.
Yeah. That's a very old term, very old. It's a very 80s term, prototype.
Sort of like the term GUI instead of UI
Geos.
UX.
It's a geos. You have a geos there. You can see the old dinosaurs, the Brontosaurus and Tyrannosaurus Rexes and all them. They're saying, well, we had arms. We had arms back then too. They got arms now, but we had arms.
Now, the question is, the burning question here for you guys is, what video should you watch next now, right?
For some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry, click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video.